My name is Hannah Jacobson, and I'm the research coordinator at Americans for the Arts. A few words about Americans for the Arts. We are based out of Washington, D.C., and we are the national organization supporting local arts agencies. We are a research, policy, and advocacy organization with the mission to bring all the arts to all the people all over the country. So, you know, no big deal. The small mission. So, you know, this is a pretty small group. I'd actually love to start by hearing a little bit more about the kinds of constituencies that you're representing. So I'm going to throw a few out, but we'll see if I'm on base here. Do we have any educators, especially people from the college? Fantastic. Okay, great. How about students? Anyone from the local arts organizations? Great. Okay. Where are some others? Where are you coming from?
New York City Special Events and New York Best Arts Festival.
Fantastic. Okay. Anyone else? Great. Okay. And so we have some people from outside of York specifically. That's great. So today I'm here to talk to you ostensibly about arts and economic prosperity. But on my way into town, I saw your beautiful change sculpture, and I've heard tell of frozen butter in the winter. Is that true? Big butters? Okay, good, I'm not wrong. So I also wanted to include a couple of slides of just some wonderful art that's happening here in York. So your Chalk It Up Festival. This is Wayne White, an artist who I believe had a public art here at York College, is that right? Last year. And I want you to remember this for later. This particular picture is actually of a couple from New York visiting. And Dream Right, so theater for young people as well. So these are all inspiring pictures. They tell us about what the arts do for our community. So I'd like to know how many of you got into the arts because of your deep passion for economic impact. Okay, one. All right, awesome. Well, that's great. Most of us, not so much. And we are a pragmatic nation. We are a nation built on Puritans. We are a nation that occasionally has a few people, I don't know if you've met them, some of them work in government, some of them work in businesses, some of them even work in the arts, who don't necessarily take the idea of the intrinsic value of the arts as the most persuasive argument about why we should be funding the arts, why the arts provide really important impact on our community. We understand their vitality. We understand why they make our communities more beautiful, more wonderful places. But I'd like to challenge you today to think about the arts a little bit differently, maybe in the way that you're already thinking about them, but that not all of us do, and coming up with a few new points, a few new ways of opening those doors, a new language for talking about the arts in our communities. So that brings me to Arts and Economic Prosperity 4, which here I will hold up the Monster National version of the study. This is the most comprehensive study of nonprofit arts organizations and their audiences and the economic impact they've had on their communities ever done. This is our fourth version. We've been doing these every 5 years, so for about the past 20 years. This time it included 182 study partners, and I'll just quickly give you a little bit of the methodology, but if you're more interested in that, I'd be happy to chat with you a bit after, or you can feel free to take a look at any of our materials online. We work with Georgia Tech professors to come up with unique input-output models for each one of our 182 study partners. So instead of a multiplier, instead of just doing a blanket saying $1 spent anywhere in the arts equals this many dollars for the community, we actually look at the community, at the tax structure of that community, at the industries in that community to see how many times a dollar goes around before it leaves the community. And that's essentially how our economic impact study works. This is a very conservative study. We don't include individual artists and we don't include for-profits, and that's simply because we can't include everything. We've chosen the narrow frame of nonprofits, and their audiences. So that is this study. And it's also conservative because we don't make any estimates. So for example, the Greater Harrisburg region, that includes York County, Cumberland County, and Dauphin County, we had 60% participation. So those other 40%, we don't make any guesses about their economic impact. So you can feel confident when you walk in somewhere and you're talking about this, you're using this as the basis for an advocacy argument, a lobbying argument, that you're not overstating the case in any way. I'd like to also call out here in York just a few of the organizations who did participate, including the Cultural Alliance of York County, Greater York Center for Dance Education, York Arts, York County Heritage Trust, the York Jewish Community Center, the York Little Theater, and the York Symphony Orchestra. So you can see there's a real breadth of organization, of type. That also goes for our national study. We work with communities from 1,400 people to 4 million people. So I know in some earlier sessions there were some conversations about what's happening in these smaller places. Well, that's really important to us too. Here in York, nonprofit, well, here in the Greater Harrisburg region, let's say that. I will get back to you on the York specific, but $54.4 million in total industry expenditures. So that includes about $30.9 million from organizations and almost $24 million from audiences. So I want to step back and think about that number. It's a big number. The study began, we started collecting data in 2010, I believe. The data collection continued through 2011, and then the data processing, and then it was published in 2012. It's about a year. I think that there's some wiggle room in there. We collected 616 surveys from different kinds of events throughout the year as well. It can include anything from theater events, surveying audience members there, to arts festivals, even gallery shows. So I hope that clarifies a little. Sure. So to take a step back, thinking about how are we getting these pretty amazing numbers? Well, I want to share a story with you. I know a couple of us are probably artists ourselves. I choose singing as my art. So a few weeks ago, my parents actually flew to Washington, D.C. To see my a cappella group perform at a competition at a theater. So they flew in and we took a cab downtown because Metro card would have been a little rough for them to pick up when they were just visiting for a weekend. And I had to go early to rehearse. So they went and they sat down, had some coffee, and then they came over with my roommate to see the show. They walked in, there were ticket takers, there was the theater manager, the ushers, there were people selling souvenirs, and then they walked in, the lights dimmed, and the sound people brought up the microphones, and we did our performance, and of course at that point it was 10 p.m. and we still had to go get dinner. So we went out, we got in our cab, we went back to my neighborhood, we had dinner, we were having a great time, so then we went out, we got some drinks afterwards. They got in a cab to go back to their hotel where they were staying, and I went home. So if you just stop there and think about all the different ways in which we were providing economic impact on our community, just us, just in that one night. And that's not just us. Think about the last time you went to a theater event. Think about the last time you went to an art gallery opening, something that felt like an event. It's not every time, but the arts really drive this kind of engagement with the community. They have pre-theater menus. This is something that we might not even think about as a local impact. But all that money, even just in the restaurant where we had dinner, some was going to the waiters, some was going to the farmers. It was sort of a farm-to-table restaurant. So some was going to farmers in my local area, some going to the restaurant manager. Think about the theater itself. the sound, the lights. It's not just actors when we go see a play, it's all the people who work in this environment. It even goes for, say, the plumbers who make sure that water is running. I'm sure those of us who've stood in line at the bathroom at a theater event can really appreciate how important all of those jobs are. So that is why one of the most important numbers that I want you to remember is this one. 1,890 full-time equivalent jobs are supported by the arts in this region. And what's especially interesting and important about these jobs is that you can't outsource arts jobs. You can't outsource the sound person, the lights person. These are necessarily local jobs. And I think that's something that really speaks to especially local legislators, to local city council members, for example, people, business leaders who want to keep jobs in your community. So organizations, arts organizations, are businesses, right? And I think that this is a little bit of a myth buster. They are good business citizens. They employ people. They purchase goods and services. They're parts of the Chamber of Commerce. They are not how many times have we heard the arts are a black hole or the equivalent? You put money in, you don't get anything out. Well, you get something out for sure in the economic impact of what we're putting back. And that leads me to this number, $6.2 million in local and state government revenue. Now, we don't localize how much government is spending in a particular community and then how much they're getting back. But nationally, we're looking at $22.3 billion, billion with a B, in government revenue. That's with only $5 billion of what they put back into the arts. So this idea that they put so much in and they never get anything back out is absolutely false, and we can say it. So this is pretty exciting. This is where numbers can really provide a way in the door to talk about all of the other benefits of the arts. You can really start saying, I know that's not true, and this is how I know. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and go talk about the attendees a little bit, which I alluded to before. Now, again, all those things I mentioned, we went out for coffee, we had dinner. Meals and snacks make up a pretty good portion of what people are spending outside of the ticket price here in the Greater Harrisburg region. But you can see those souvenirs and gifts, those tables where you're buying the CDs or the t-shirts, transportation. I mentioned we hopped in a few cabs, public transportation. Lodging, I don't know if you'd want to stay in a 20-cent hotel, but remember that this is an average of both local and non-local attendees. So you can see that this is $15.12 outside of the cost of admission, pretty good number, but what's really interesting is when we break it down into local versus non-local audiences. So non-local audiences are actually spending 27% more, and those who stay overnight are spending more than $109. So that's an even bigger piece of it. It looks like mostly, though, you have almost 98% here in Harrisburg that are non-local but just coming in for the day. So that's something that's specific to you, which is the other great thing about this study, is that it really can be specific to the region. But what I want to call out is this piece at the bottom. 70% of non-local attendees were here because of the arts event. We asked them very specifically on their audience intercept surveys, why are you here? What brought you here? 70%, this arts event is the primary purpose for my trip here today, which means that if you don't have that arts event, that's a lot of $18.27 spent in the community that won't be coming in. And 43% of the local attendees said that they would go somewhere else for an arts event. So you're losing another percentage of people if you don't have these arts events in your community. This is really important. This is where you can start really talking about the community vitality, the cultural vitality that the arts bring. They also bring cultural tourism. Cultural tourism is a big buzzword right now, really important to city managers because people are so interested in authentic experiences, really experiencing a community for what it is, and the arts and culture are such a big part of showing what are our communities about. So, does it work? Well, you can say, everything has an economic impact. Why should we trust this one? Well, this is a pretty interesting and powerful list of partners we have, and we list it on the back of all of our materials. So you can see we're working with government. We've got the National Conference of State Legislatures. The U.S. Conference of Mayors is a huge partner. They really understand how the arts impact locally. Mayors have been a great partner for us. National League of Cities, NACO, the National Association of Counties. But then we also have business leaders, Conference Board, and the Business Civic Leadership Center. These are not people who are going to buy into something that's not rigorously tested. So the authority, the authenticity of this study really comes through with these partners, and it's a useful way to talk about it with someone who may be a bit more skeptical. I come from Americans for the Arts. They're going to expect me to say that the arts have some impact. But some of these people, having them back it up, that's a pretty useful way of thinking through this. But it's not the only way. So I want to take another turn here and say, we don't have to choose. We don't have to choose between economic impact and vitality and talking about the arts as having other kinds of social impact that are just as important. Economic impact is one lens, one way of looking at it. But this is another one. I think innovation is another pretty important buzzword right now, especially for those of us who've seen Silicon Valley, that HBO show. I don't know if anyone else has seen that, but innovation, something big right now. Can anyone guess at what that is? What this picture is? You can just shout it out.
A purging tank, probably World War I, early World War II.
All right. Well, this is a picture of the artists who created this decoy holding it up. This is a balloon version of a tank, and this is called the Ghost Army, Operation Fortitude. This was something that's actually been classified for a long time, recently became declassified. There was a special segment of the Army that was dedicated to artists and creators and innovators coming in to create these kinds of decoys to fool the Nazis into shooting at some very harmless balloon tanks. They saved thousands of lives doing this. And I bring this up because we know that artists are innovators in our communities. Artists can be useful, and artists can make things, and artists bring so much more than just beautiful things. They also bring an incredible amount of creativity and new ways of thinking into our communities. And that brings me to the linkage between that kind of creativity and jobs. Jobs, another word that is huge, economy, jobs. This is what a lot of our legislators, a lot of our managers, it's what they care about. That's what they want to hear about. And we can talk about it. So this is York County very specifically. You can see on this map. Each star is an arts-related business, and there are 771 of them just here in York County, and they employ almost 4,000 people. That's 3.4% of businesses and 2% of employees in York. And these numbers are pretty good. That tracks just a tad bit below national numbers for businesses, but right on for a number of employees. The creative industries are a little bit different from the Arts and Economic Prosperity reports, because while Arts and Economic Prosperity is just nonprofits, creative industries includes for-profits and nonprofits. We use more than 600 SIC codes. These are from Dun & Bradstreet. So Dun & Bradstreet is one of the most trusted sources for business data in the country, and we use anything from design companies, advertising firms, to orchestras, ballets, theater companies. So think broadly when you think about the creative industries. We really include quite a lot in here. But again, we are conservative about it. Not everyone has a DUNS number. For example, many individual artists are not counted in this because many of them are not part of businesses, and many, if not most, don't call in for a DUNS number, although it is free. So if your organization doesn't have a DUNS number, please check out our website, and we have a very easy step-by-step process for how you can be counted. You can be one of these little stars, as I know we all want to be. But this is a really useful way to talk about the arts in the community because everyone loves seeing a map. When you walk into a legislator's office, if you've ever done it, the first thing you'll see is that picture of their district right there. And we actually have more than 11,000 reports for free downloadable on our website. And we can localize to pretty much anywhere. The ones that are free include counties, states, state legislative districts, federal legislative districts, and some comparative reports. But for a customized report, we can do anything from a school district to a zip code to a multi-city region, anything you want, which is really powerful. And when you do use these for advocacy tools, I have a little mnemonic that I use to remember how to talk about them that I will share with you, and it is the ABCs of creative industries. So remember that the creative industries are important because they support arts education, they have a broad reach, they create jobs, and they help develop neighborhoods and economies. We can even call it the ABCDEs, I think. So I want to skip to the broad reach for a second and go back. I also heard people talking before about the importance of thinking about arts outside of just the downtown regions, outside of just the cities. I think the creative industries reports are great ways of thinking through this issue because if you can see here, yeah, we definitely have a concentration of stars right in the middle there. But that's not to say, look, there's a concentration here and here. They're all over. There really isn't a place that's untouched by the creative industries. And what an exciting thing to be able to walk in and say to someone, you're not just supporting the downtown areas, you're not just supporting the big cities. When you support the creative industries, when you support the creative arts, you're supporting all of your constituents. You're supporting a really large number of people. Now, to go back here, I want to return your thinking a little bit to the idea of artists as innovators in the community. So in terms of creating jobs and creating a community that supports these almost 4,000 businesses, well, we need to educate our students to be both the people to take on these jobs and to be the people who are in the audience, not to mention how will we have dance companies without dancers. But more to the point, I'd like to bring up a quick anecdote, one of my favorites. This happened last year. Rick Perry in Texas was talking about Boeing. And Boeing was going to be building a major new factory. And they were down to two places, the Dallas-Fort Worth area and Chicago. Now, they went with Chicago, and Rick Perry went on record saying, Boeing didn't come here because Chicago has the more creative community. They have the cultural vitality that will bring the best employees, that will retain the best employees, and that will keep a business running. That's what we need here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And I can tell you, I know the head of the Arts Council down there, and she is doing her best to get that happening. But that said, I think it's a really instructive anecdote because the arts don't just create jobs in the arts. the arts also create culturally vibrant communities that bring in business, that support business. More businesses, more people, more employees, more people spending money, great for the economy. That it all feeds back into each other, and it further suggests that we no longer need to have these very strict boundaries between the arts have great intrinsic impact and the arts have economic impact. Well, they do, and they do, but it's about both. It's about building both. It's about educating about both, about creating these jobs, and once we do, we're also developing our neighborhoods and our economies in really important, sustainable ways. So these creative industries reports, as I said, are available, freely downloadable on our website, and please go on, download them, use them, talk about them, get them out, throw them from the rooftops. Why does this matter? Why does this matter to people? This is a really interesting list from the National League of Cities, and it's the top priorities that they've gathered from their city managers all across the country. And I think you can see, if you just start reading down this list, the arts not only touch all of these, but are really, really interconnected with almost all of them. So business attraction and recruitment. Losing Boeing is a pretty big deal. Downtown commercial redevelopment, as we were talking about before, the idea of having more creative industries, more creative businesses, business retention. In order to get the best businesses, you need to get the best employees and keep them. And the best employees want the kind of place where they can walk out the door and have a cultural experience. It's not just cultural tourists who are looking for an authentic experience, it's all of us. And I think that what was talked about before with maker spaces, the idea that here in York you have the talent, you have the people who are doing this. It's extremely important. It's why we all live where we live. Small business and entrepreneur support. I think we can all agree that artists, and many of us in fact, are small businesses and entrepreneurs who would really benefit from that support. Tourism and entertainment. I'll remind you of that picture I showed right at the beginning of a New York couple here in York. Really important. I wonder if they were here because of the arts. I don't know if they were one of the 616 surveys that we collected for arts and economic prosperity, but they might have been. And community and neighborhood development really goes back to that intrinsic and economic value. So, better jobs, better communities. There have also been a number of really interesting studies with business leaders and corporate leaders. The IBM study was a global CEO study done all over the world, and they said that creativity was the #1 piece that was going to be important in the 21st century workforce. Ready to Innovate is a study that Americans for the Arts did with the Conference Board back in 2007, where creativity was in the top 5 of what business leaders felt would be important for the new thought economy. But what was interesting about that is that while 85% of them thought that creativity was up there in that top 5, more than 70%, hang on, I'm sorry, scratch that. More than 70% thought that creativity was in the top 5, but 85% thought that we weren't teaching our students enough to get to that creative level, to get to that innovative level. This is that study. These are the linkages. Now, this is interesting because I think for a lot of us who work in the arts, the link between arts and creativity is obvious. And then the link between creativity and innovation, pretty clear. But those arrows are not clear to everyone, and that's where we come in. That's where these numbers come in. That's where we need to start thinking this is our job to educate people, that these are important links, and these are core to the 21st century workforce. You don't have to take my word for it. This is something that we have in numbers, that we have in data, but it's still something that amazingly our policy leaders have a pretty easy time ignoring sometimes. One thing that's really amazing is that 25% of school principals say that they are seeing cuts in arts education, and a third of them say that they're expecting future cuts. That, even when we know that creativity and the arts are what's going to create the kind of workers that businesses need and want to employ. So you talk about wanting to create jobs. How can you leave out the arts? Well, because that link isn't clear. Improved academic performance is another piece of this. It's not just about the economy. It's not just about jobs. It's also about giving kids the opportunity to even get there. We see an amazing shift in the likelihood of dropout by grade 10 with high arts involvement versus low. This is a James Catterall study. He's a really, really important researcher in the field of arts education. Goes beyond students in arts education into how about healthcare? I've heard that's been a pretty important topic in the last couple of years as well. Shorter recovery time, reduced length of hospital stays, the arts in healthcare, the arts in military, our returning military members coming back. In all of these ways, the arts are incredibly important to the ways in which we think about our communities, and we have a job to do. So I'd like to leave you today. I hope I've left you with some language and some tools and some numbers that are new, that maybe have challenged the way that you, and hopefully will challenge the way that the people that you deal with outside of the arts community think about the arts. And this is our Arts Action Fund, which if you haven't become a member, I strongly urge you to do so. It is completely free, and we will send out alerts when the arts need you. We send out emails when the arts are threatened in your community or nationally. It's just a way of helping become part of our goal of having 1 million members, stuffing the boxes of our congresspeople, of our local legislators, telling them the arts are important to us, they're important to our communities, and they help us make better communities, better people, a better York. So, thank you so much for having me. I know we have a few minutes. Thank you.